Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and today we are going to talk about a family legacy and three sons who committed to adventure in hopes of lifting their father's spirits by following in his footsteps. And they did it in one of the most dangerous but coolest sports I can think of. The adventure? The Baja 1000 off-road race in Baja, Mexico. This is probably the most famous off-road race in the world, and it attracts both professional race car drivers and amateurs alike. And it is an adventure like no other. Our guest today is Kolt Bell, and I am so excited to share his story that I've been hearing bits and pieces of for years. He has raced in the Baja 1000 6 times, and he's been back several other times to chase. We're going to find out more about what that means. Kolt grew up in Alaska, and he now resides in Atlanta, Georgia, with his beautiful wife and 3 boys under the age of 3. He is an anti-fraud professional in the banking industry by day, but when time permits and adventure calls, he is my hero as an off-road Baja race car driver. Kolt, my friend, welcome to the campfire.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so excited, man. I'm giddy. You had me watch a movie before this call called Dust to Glory, and it's all about the Baja 1000. And I watched it yesterday, and I'm just so fired up to talk with you about this because it's so much bigger than I ever anticipated. If we can, let's just start with a basic overview of who you are, where you live. Tell us a little bit about you, and when did you get into this sport?
Yeah, I think you covered it. So I grew up in Alaska, which is about as far away as you can get from Baja.
Yeah.
And then I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is about as far as away you can get from Baja, and still make our way over there. So got into it. I mean, Baja, my dad actually did this back in the 70s, and he raced a Class 11 stock Volkswagen and finished the Baja 1000. And then we moved to Alaska, and my brother and I, we used to watch, off-road on TV or saw this picture of my dad, and we're like, someday we should do that. And we actually finally, the day came, we're like, let's go do it. And got to go do Baja. We did a stateside race before we went to Baja, and then we went and took on the biggest nonstop point-to-point race in the world. And like I said, it's pretty dangerous, but we had a lot of fun. And here we are, 15 years later, still heading down to Mexico every once in a while.
15 years you've been at this. So I want to go just kind of backwards a little bit for people that aren't familiar. Maybe they haven't seen Dust to Glory. If you're listening to this and you're interested, you got to watch Dust to Glory. But can we just do a quick overview of the race? What is this race? What kind of cars compete in this race? Like, give us the overview.
So the Baja 1000, it starts out of Ensenada, and every year it rotates. It's either a race back to Ensenada, about 1,000 miles, or it'll run all the way down the peninsula to La Paz, again, about 1,000 miles. And a lot of times whenever I talk to people, they're like, oh, dune buggies. I'm like, think of dune buggies on steroids, right? They've got trophy trucks that are, $300,000, $750,000, $1 million vehicle that they've got 40 inches of suspension, 42-inch tires that can just fly across the desert. And then you got different classes from unlimited buggies, which we've ran, all the way down to stock Volkswagens that are, probably $15,000, $20,000 that are stock Volkswagen bugs. So think of like 1970s stock Volkswagens. They put roll cages in them, the safety equipment, and off we go. And we've raced those as well.
Wow, it's crazy. And motorcycles too.
Yeah, those guys are crazy. Let's start with that. Like, there is no way I'm ever going to do this on a bike, but they'll give those guys a head start. And the pros, they'll finish pretty quick. The amateurs, they're out in front of the trophy trucks, and those trophy trucks start catching them about nightfall. And then it gets really dangerous for those guys. So a lot of times those motorcycle guys, they'll just pull off to the side, let the leaders go by, and just kind of hang out for a little bit and then jump back on the course. But everybody's very conscious of the motorcycles and give them plenty of room. So we'll try to be as safe as we possibly can.
Yeah. So it's roughly 1,000 miles. What is the track like? How long does this race take?
So the course, it's a combination of open desert. Some of the segments are on highway. We have to obey speed limits off that, and then a lot of it's ranchers down there in Mexico that open up their properties, and we run on old ranch roads, and we tear them up. I mean, there's no two ways about it. But it's a lot of everything. I mean, you're out in the desert. There's a saying. So sometimes fourth gear is not fast enough and first gear is not slow enough. So
Okay.
the terrain is everything down there. So we go through wide open deserts, we go through the mountains, we go through rivers, we go through dry lake beds. Just about everything that you can do down there.
And like this isn't this, so it's point to point. Like it's basically you just have to get to the finish. It doesn't really matter how you get there. Is that right? Because in the movie I saw like one dude cut over and rode on the beach for a little while.
So they've changed the rules quite a bit with technology. So now they've got virtual checkpoints
Okay.
that they'll put up throughout the course. It used to be back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, they gave you a kind of a map and said, here's the start, here's the finish, and go. For us, we stay on the course. It keeps it a lot safer. You know where everybody's at. We can track them. So my job whenever we go typically is to navigate. So I try to keep us on course and make sure we hit all the virtual checkpoints. If you miss those, you get penalties off of it. One of your questions was like, how long is that race? The fast guys, they'll finish 1,000 miles in 24 hours, and you've got 40 hours to finish before you time out. So it can take a while, and we've timed out before.
Yeah. So you mentioned your role as a navigator. What are the different roles that people play when you're racing in a Baja? So
this is really a team sport. It's not like the typical NASCAR. They've got teams too, right? But 3 hours and you're racing around, and you're done. It's an adventure, and it takes us, like I say, from Ensenada all the way down to La Paz. And you'll have your drivers and your navigators, and typically there's sets of drivers and navigators, anywhere from 2 to 3. Some people do it Ironman, and they do the entire thing themselves. I don't know how they do that, but they do. And then you've got your support crew, and we call them chase trucks. So you'll have multiple chase trucks that will head down the peninsula, depending on the race, in pre-stage. So whenever the car gets there, we can field them, we can change tires. And then if there's a problem with the car, we actually use those chase trucks to go back into the desert on the race course to go get the car, see if we can fix it. And we've had to do that a number of times. My brother and I, we broke down, and the chase truck, they show up out of nowhere, and it's like angels, right? It's like, where'd you guys come from? And it's like, oh, we saw you guys were stopped, and we're out there trying to fix something. So the chase trucks, even if you can't get in the car, that is really, you can experience the adventure. And I would just tell anybody, if you're interested in it, doing Baja, everybody needs help. So if you get on one of the forums and you say, hey, is anybody looking for extra help? They will invite you. It's a very inclusive fraternity.
That is super cool. So you say the word chase. I mean, I'm imagining like chasing these cars. Are you trying, like, as when you're chasing, are you like staying ahead of them, or are you literally like somehow getting on an open road and beating them? How does that work?
So the chase trucks stay on the highways. So the Baja Peninsula, there's a couple different routes that we'll take, and sometimes it goes through San Felipe, and you'll lose your chase truck on that side because it's very difficult to get back on the course. And then depending on the speed of the vehicles, if you're in a slower class, a couple chase trucks can just basically follow you all the way down, maybe leapfrog. On the faster vehicles, you go ahead and you pre-stage them down the peninsula, so they're running into you, and then you'll come back up the peninsula if they have problems to find them or fix the vehicles.
Yeah. And so you've played all of these roles. You've been a driver, you've been a navigator, and you've been a chaser.
I have, and I will tell you, whenever we got to the Class 1 Unlimited buggies, I realized pretty quickly I have no business being behind the wheel. So I let other people do that. My job as a navigator, and that's what I really like to do. Whenever we first started doing it, it's basically my job is to watch a GPS, keep us on track, and then encourage the driver, right? Either slow them down if we feel like we're going a little too fast, right? And they're getting kind of amped up, or to encourage them to go a little bit faster. If I can see that the road's wide open in front of us, right? So a lot of times I'll be sitting there going, go, go, go. It's wide open, and I'm watching for dangers to be able to tell them to slow down. And then we go through those. And then the chase crews, I mean, that even if you're driving or navigating, you're going to be chasing, because you got to be in one of those trucks to get down to where you're going to be at. And that's a lot of fun. It's just, a lot of time spent with other people, like interest. And You can spend 40 hours in the trucks going all the way down to La Paz and then turning back around and driving 24 hours to get back to the border. So
Mm.
it's the chase part. It's it's part of the experience.
Yeah, that's wild. So, like for the drivers and the navigators, and like for you and your crew in particular, are you in the car the whole time? Are you taking turns?
So we take turns, especially on the 1,000. So the shorter races, we might just have one set, a driver and navigator, but it really is almost impossible to do it by yourself.
Okay.
The sections that I've done in 2013 and then again in 2017 came into kind of like the night section and then into the next morning. So I was in the car for about 10 hours and we covered about 400 miles and you're beat up by the time you're done. And you want to get out. You want to get a taco. You want to get a beer. Put somebody else in the car and let them experience the race.
Yeah. So, I think for me, thinking about this Baja 1000, like having watched that movie that you had me watch, Dust to
Mhm.
Glory, like there's a visual. And I just, most people are probably listening to this podcast. And even if they're watching, they just see you and I. But we'll have pictures of your car and some of your experiences in the show notes. But like there's just this visual of these cars. I mean, you're not on a track, you're on like just completely rough terrain. I mean, a good portion of this race, like your car is in the air. Is that right?
The faster guys, yeah, you're spending a lot of time bouncing around. You can YouTube the videos, and one of the things that I like to do is Google like Baja 1000 in car, and a lot of people have in car cameras. I will tell you the technology makes it look really smooth, or if you're watching this, but it's pretty violent. There was a saying it's like being in a 24-hour plane crash, right? It's just over and over and over again. You're hitting whoops, you're hitting bumps, you're bottoming out, you're in the air. It's rough. It can be really rough at speed.
And what is that like for I think you had made a mention, like as a navigator, I mean, when you're the driver, like you have some feeling of control, right? As the navigator, basically have no control.
You have no control, and having driven, I realized that the drivers aren't really in control either. The car, you're just kind of, it's like being on marbles. The car is all around you. And it's funny you should talk about that. The first race we did was stateside in Pahrump, Nevada, and I was navigating for my brother, and I thought for sure we were going way too fast. And I'm thinking to myself, man, we're going too fast. We're going way too fast. And then we got nerfed, where somebody comes up behind you and they'll basically run into you to let you know that they're back there and to get out of the way. And we got hit. And I thought to myself, man, we're going way too slow. We're going way too slow. So again, it's tough to gauge it, but in the navigator seat, there's not a lot of people that can do it because you don't have control. You're trying to help as much as you possibly can, but at the end of the day, you don't have the brake, you don't have the gas, you don't have the steering wheel. You're going along for a ride, and trying to help out as much as you can.
Hey everyone, it's Scott here. This podcast is a passion project for me because I absolutely love adventure. And it's thanks to the effort of my residential real estate team here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that many of you know as the W Realty Group, that this podcast gets funded. This awesome group of people have unmatched levels of competence and caring for our clients. If you know of anyone looking to buy or sell a home, our team serves the Charlotte, North Carolina market, but we can also help you find an agent anywhere throughout the US or Canada through our highly connected network. When you support our real estate business, you are also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your referrals. Yeah, and the spectators, that's a big part of this event from what I gathered from this movie, right? I mean, locals, but also people that travel in just to watch.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of like put props out there. The locals down the Baja Peninsula, they are absolutely fabulous, and they show up before the race starts. Whenever we're doing tech and contingency, where all the cars are kind of on display, and the kids they want your autograph. It's like you're a rock star whenever you go down there racing, and they will line up the course, and you'll be out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, man, we haven't seen anything forever. And then middle of the night, you'll start seeing these little fires pop up, and then next thing you know, there's people standing on the side of the course as you're going by cheering you on. Man, they show up big time down there in Baja to support the races.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed, I mean, like what's the average speed these vehicles are going?
So whenever we're racing the class 11, we're trying to average 25 miles an hour, so we don't time out. The trophy trucks, the class 1 unlimited buggies, those guys will average 50 miles an hour. And if you think about driving 1,000 miles on the interstate, trying to average 50 is tough whenever you stop and you take a break and you got to get gas and whatnot. And these guys are flying. I mean, they're hitting the pits, they're getting tires just like NASCAR, and they're gone. And they're, you know, I've been in the car up to 128 miles an hour, flying across the desert, and started thinking to myself, like, if we wipe out right now, we're going to be tumbling for a while.
Yeah. Man, we're definitely going to get into that. Some of the fear, some of the decision making, like, cause that's just crazy to me. Like, just to bring it back to the spectators. I mean, 50 miles an hour on dirt, bumpy roads, it's really fast. And you even said yourself, like, even as a navigator, like the drivers aren't really not that much in control either. But like, I'm watching this movie and the path or the track, whatever you want to call it, I mean, it's lined with spectators, and these cars come ripping through, and I mean, I'm just thinking, like, my gosh, like these spectators are just lining this path and these cars are coming ripping through. Like, it just seems so dangerous just for the spectators.
It can be, and unfortunately, whenever there's injuries or fatalities, it's usually somebody in a bad spot, and one of the vehicles will hit them. But yeah, those are, and the thing to note is, like, this is not a closed course. This is not a race course. It's an open course. We're going on ranch roads that are sometimes traffic's coming at you the other way. So you really got to pay attention. And whenever we see spectators, we just slow down. Like, we're not in it to win it. We're just trying to finish the race. We don't want to have any of those incidents. But yeah, unfortunately, it does happen, and it's crazy because what they're trying to do whenever you see those videos is they're actually trying to touch the vehicles as they come by, which is in itself is absolutely crazy, right? That's how into the sport they are.
Wow. All right. So I read something on Wikipedia about the Baja 1000 spectators that I thought was pretty interesting. And I think I mentioned it to you, but like, it said something like you have to be careful because spectators, in order to make their experience as spectators more exciting, they actually build booby traps and different things on the course along the way to not to cause injury, but just to make it more exciting, to create like these unexpected jumps and things. Is that something that actually happens?
It does. So to your point, they're not trying to hurt anybody, but it's pretty cool to watch the vehicles go in the air, right? So I will tell you a pro tip for anybody who does Baja. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you see a bunch of people gathered, they're there because there's something that's going to put you in the air. Slow down, right? Or be on your P's and Q's. Watch out for it. But that's kind of the pro tip, is you've done this for a couple of years, is why is everybody out here in the middle of nowhere? And it's usually either a terrain issue that's going to get you airborne, or they've done something to try to create a jump.
So what is that experience like? Are these things like, are these booby traps unexpected? Do you see them at the last minute, or do you not know until after you've hit it?
It depends. I will say in the slower moving vehicles, you're going to pick them up. In the faster moving vehicles, you're probably not going to see them, but the suspension that you have is probably going to be able to absorb just about anything that you see, that you get in the air. But yeah, they're not marked. I mean, we try to pre-run the course as much as we can, and it's difficult for us since we come so far away, but we'll actually try to mark dangers so that we know what's going on, at least the first sections of the race. But past that, you're kind of on your own. And at night, it becomes very difficult to start spotting those booby traps.
Yeah. All right. So another thing that I saw in the movie that was really interesting that they mentioned was these silt fields. And I guess if you can tell like the listeners, what are these silt fields, and did you experience anything going through those silt fields?
Yeah. So the phrase is silt sucks. And so it's the best way to describe silt is if you think of like sand that you can run through your hands, that's fine. Think of baby powder, the consistency of baby powder. And it is just, whenever it hits, whenever the car gets in it, like, it's just everywhere. And to answer your question, like, yeah, in 2017, whenever we finished the 1,000, I was running and navigating for a friend of ours, Ben, who was driving, and we had the silt bed section, and it was brutal. It was a brutal section, and we had started picking up condensation off of the coast, and we were just a little bit of moisture. And then whenever we hit the silt, it stuck to everything. And we were sitting there wiping our visors off. The lights got clogged up, and Ben ended up getting stuck in the silt and got out. Probably took us about an hour to dig the car out. And as we get back in, get it all buttoned up, get back in the belts, we take off and we make it maybe 100, 200 feet, and he buries the car again. And
How deep is this silt?
yeah, well, so you got to imagine, like, we've got probably, I don't know, 30 inches of clearance or so, and we're to the pan of the car, so
Okay.
it's all the way down. And that's usually whenever you get in the silt, you're going to put it on the pan, and you just got to start digging it out. And we're sitting there digging it out, and Ben, he is so apologetic. He's like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. I was trying to get on the other side. I thought it'd be better." And I looked at him. It's middle of the night, and I'm like, "Ben, we're racing the Baja 1000 in a Class 1 unlimited buggy. Like, can you think of anything better to be doing right now?" He's like, it's a good way to look at it. And so we sat there for probably another hour or two, digging it out. And that was the last time we got stuck. But it's silt. It's tough, man. It is not the section you want to be as a driver or navigator, because you're probably going to get stuck at some point.
Yeah, man, it's just crazy. And I'm like watching the Dust to Glory. Good title, by the way, Dust to Glory. Like when they were showing the cars and the vehicles going through, I mean, it's like you can't even see the car. It's just like this cloud of smoke. And so, like, was that what the experience was like for you? And I imagine, like, being inside, can you even see out?
So the problem we were having is it kept caking up on our shields. So at that point, we started opening the visors. Then we got the silt in our eyes, which like bad move, right? But whenever it hits and it goes airborne, you can't see anything. For the most part, as long as somebody's not in front of you, it's not like constant nonstop on the longer beds. But whenever you first get in them, you hit and it's like, okay, we're in the silt beds, and it's just like baby powder just exploding.
Yeah. And how long are you in these things? Is it minutes? Is it like, I mean, is it seconds? Is it?
So sometimes, depending on what it is, and it's a natural phenomenon that creates silt. And sometimes you'll hit it and it's a small little silt bed, maybe 100 yards. Other times you'll be in it, like the ones we were in. It was a couple miles that we had to navigate through the silt.
Yeah. And it's so wild, just the visual of this. All right. So let's talk about the races that you've run, because you've done Baja 1000 6 times. You've done a number of other races. And for you, like, I've known you, it's kind of fun at the beginning of this call. Like, we were kind of talking back, and I remember, like, you and I have known each other for close to 20 years. And, you know, for the first several races that you guys did, it was really just about finishing.
Yep.
So I'd love to just kind of talk about that history.
Yeah. And I mean, whenever we started this, the idea was we were going to just run the Baja 1000. We were going to be done. And we thought maybe we should run a race before that. We ran a stateside race, the terrible town 250 out of Pahrump. We didn't finish that race. We only made it like 21 miles. And then we did the Baja 1000 thinking, hey, we're definitely going to finish this one. And we made it 147 miles and we broke. And then we were like, okay, well, we can't stop until we finish a race. So we came back stateside in 2008 and we broke at probably another 6 races. And at that point, it was getting very frustrating. I got to give my older brother, Patrick, a lot of credit. Like, he just kept going, right? It was like, are we ever going to finish a race? I don't know. It's a long ways to come. There's a lot of people that are trying to support you. And then we finally finished a race in 2008, another 250-mile race. Toys for Tots 250. We finished 2 cars. We finished our Class 10 car, and then we also finished a Class 11 Volkswagen that we were running simultaneously. So we finally finished 2 races. And then past that, whenever we go down to Baja, it's probably a 50-50 shot for most of the teams to be able to finish. The pro teams, they'll probably finish. The amateurs that are showing up for the first time, you don't know what you're getting into, and just things will bite you. Either the course of your car or something to that effect.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took us a while, and that was we caught a lot of grief from a lot of people. They were asking, how long are you guys going to do this before you finish a race? And we're like, it's not like the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
Whenever we finish one, that's our goal. Whenever we go down to Baja, it's really us versus Baja. Whenever we do this,
Yeah.
and we're just trying to finish. In 2017, we finished 7th, which was good for Class 1, but that wasn't our goal. Our goal is always just to try to get the car home.
Just to finish 7th that's a great bonus. So I'm curious, like, what happens? Like, why don't you finish? I know that sounds like an obvious question, but like, what happens that causes you to not finish?
Let's see. In the first race, we blew the motor. So that was the second race in the Baja. We ripped the front end off the car, hit a boulder. So we've lost belts, we've lost wheels, we've lost. Usually it's engine mechanics or transmissions that'll get you. And if you think about like that silt stuff, like that's really hard on transmissions. So a lot of times we'll lose a transmission or an engine.
Mm. So, and then like, so the couple times I think you said you finished Baja 1000 twice.
Mhm.
So what had to happen for that to become a reality?
So the first time we raced it and we finished, we were actually racing with another team, which was great. They did all the planning and we got to help out. And then in 2017, they weren't going to run. It was the 50th anniversary, and my brother was like, "We've got to run. We've got to run the 50th." So we borrowed the car, and we had to do all the planning. So whenever you start going through the logistics of running 1,000 miles through Mexico, we start basically planning for contingency, right? Like where does the fuel need to be? Where's the tires need to be? So BFG tires, they have pit support. We use those guys a lot to be able to help us get down the road. And then we start just planning logistics with the chase trucks. Where do we want them? Who do we want in them? What tools might we need? How many tires do we need to send down there? And then you strap in and you go. And it's a lot of determination, right? So there's a lot of teams that won't finish just because it gets difficult. We've been out there in the middle of the night. It's cold, and we're trying to work on a car with a very limited, tool set here. And it's really easy to say, you know what, forget it. This isn't worth it. I quit. And that's really the biggest thing is the guys that we go with. It's you don't quit. You just keep going. And I think of like Baja is kind of like life in 1,000 miles. And it's going to get hard. It's not always fun. You're going to second guess yourself and be like, why are we doing this? Like, this is the stupidest idea ever.
Yeah.
You'll have that self-doubt, and you'll see it, maybe with your driver, and just kind of look at each other. And my brother and I have done this a number of times. I'm like, all right, we got nothing else to do right now besides dig this car out or try to fix it and just keep, going down the course. And sometimes it's, 10 miles and you break it again and you fix it and you break it again and you just limp it home until you can get some help. But determination is a big, big factor whenever you're doing something like this.
So there's determination, there's probably some luck involved, right, to getting it all the way home. Like the times when you don't finish and, car breaks down, how do you get out of there? Like, are you in the middle of nowhere? What happens?
So if you get lucky, once whenever we were driving the Volkswagen, we broke it. We broke the transmission and just kind of limped it down to the highway, and then ended up at a taco stand for some tacos and beer. So if you can get lucky and break next to the road, perfect. The other times that you'll break it, you're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's an extraction event for the chase team. So they'll come out there. It'll take them hours to get to you. Put a tow strap on it, and we're trying to find the nearest road that we can get it to, and then put it up on the trailer and bring it home.
So when you talk about the chase team, like, do you have your own crew, or are there like people down there that like are dedicated to helping multiple people? How does that work?
So typically, because of the logistics, you have your own guys.
Okay.
So typically, whenever we do the 1,000, we try to have 2, 3. If we get more people that want to come down and help, we'll have 4 chase trucks. So that's a big deal. And one of the things about it, though, is anybody down there will help you. Like if you ask for help, you will get help. And I remember the last race we did in 2019, we were chasing, and there was a team from Texas, and a guy was doing it on a bike, and he was all by himself, him and his brother. His brother was chasing him. And I was like, if you guys need anything, just make sure you ask people. They'll give you anything you possibly need. And they actually needed a tool to fix the bike that they didn't have. And they're like, man, we're going to be out. I'm like, don't do that. Don't quit. And so we handed them a tool, and they're like, we'll send it back to you. And I was like, just keep it. Right.
Yeah.
So
I got to imagine that it's a really supportive environment down there.
big time.
Yeah, when you go on something like that. So your whole team for your one car, how many people are involved in this?
So I'm just trying to think back to like 2017. We probably had 10, 12 people
Yeah.
that were down there in 3 trucks.
That's awesome. And so like logistically planning that, is this like a group of guys that you've like worked with in the past and you just sort of rally everybody in advance? How's the planning going into this thing?
So pretty much you got your standard crew that goes all the time, and then you get people that they answer the call for adventure, right? We talk to people and they're like, man, that sounds really cool. I'd like to do that someday. And it's like, well, the race is coming up here in November. Do you want to go? And that's how we actually picked up one of our main guys that comes every year. Was my brother just talking about Baja up in Alaska? He's like, can I do it? So that's kind of how you assemble kind of your core crew, and then you get volunteers that are like, sounds like an adventure, let's do it. Depending on how many people want to come, we get enough chase trucks to be able to bring everybody down.
Yeah, Colt, it sounds pretty cool. I'd like to do it sometime.
All right, well, I'll let you know whenever we're going, and you can come down.
Man, it sounds wild. I'm kind of giddy. I'm like a little kid here, but like, the reality of this is like a really dangerous sport. Like, can you talk about like the decision making, like the fear involved? I mean, have you ever feared for your life when you were out there?
So to answer a couple questions, it's inherently dangerous, right? So even whenever you see like off-road trucks or the Chevy commercial and they're bouncing across, it'll say off-road is inherently dangerous. So by definition, it's dangerous. I'll be honest with you. There's times whenever I'm getting in the car that I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, do I really want to get in this? You gotta get past that. And I'll be honest with you. Whenever we did the first 1,000 after the race that we broke, I told my little brother, I'm like, hey, why don't you go? Because quite frankly, I didn't want to get in the car because my first experience was like, that was the craziest thing ever. Like, you try it. And then once you get down the course, it kind of slows down a little bit, but there's butterflies, getting into the car, getting strapped up, and it's the real deal. I mean, we have Hans devices. We've got 5-point racing harnesses. You've got, fire extinguishers throughout the vehicle in case something happens. So, I mean, we take safety very seriously. So the good news is you're buttoned up, and we have crashed, and we walked away from that without a scratch. So once you start to understand it, that nervousness goes away a little bit, but it's kind of like sports, right? You usually get butterflies before you go do something.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that is healthy, right? Like if you didn't have any fear, like that could probably be like over the top dangerous, right?
Yeah, and as we're flying across the desert, sometimes I'll sit there and be like, man, we probably need to slow down a little bit. And I have been known to see imaginary cows on the course and tell my brother, hey, I think there's a cow up here. So we slow it down, right? And it's like, oh, never mind, I was wrong. But anything you can do sometimes just to get them to slow down a little bit. And then other times, again, we're trying to get the drivers to go faster.
Yeah. So you sent me some pictures that we'll put in the show notes of one of your buggies that you were racing, and it's literally like flipping in the air. The pictures, there's like a sequence of pictures, and the car is like flipping upside down in the air. Like, talk to me about that.
So it's an interesting story. My brother's driving. I'm navigating in that one. It's a San Felipe 250. It's a short race. But it's fast. It's really, really fast. And we had already pre-ran the course and had marked the dangers. I literally had just gotten in the car about a mile before we wiped out. And anytime you see a car crashing like that, it's always the navigator's fault. So we just kind of have that by default. So that one's my fault. And as I'm getting in there, just trying to get orientated, the GPS was having some problems. It was spinning around. And I'm watching it, and I didn't bother to tell my brother because he's got enough stuff going on in the driver's seat. And I'm sitting there trying to fix the GPS or figure out what's going on. And about the time I looked up, I saw what we call a G out, and I was like, "Oh, danger, danger!" And by then it was all over. So we hit the back end of the car, came up over the front, and we ended up flipping it, I think 2 or 3 times, and landed on the top. And as we get settled down there, to add injury to insult, we start hearing people running up saying, fire, fire. And I'm like, oh, great, we're on fire. We got to get out of here. And it was just a small little fire, went out. But we ended up crawling out, and 2 other cars ended up crashing to that exact same spot. So we weren't the only ones, but that was a ride. That was a ride. We've put them on their side, and we've put it upside down once.
And no injuries in that situation.
Nope, nothing. So we crawled out, and we ended up flipping the car back over. And to be honest with you, we probably could have kept going. But at that point, the adrenaline was really racing. And we're like, you know what, let's just take it easy here. Our goal was to do the Baja 1000 that year. So we kind of wrecked the car early in the season, put it all back together, and then did the 1,000 and finished.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So it begs the next question, like, why? Why do this? Is it for the adrenaline, or is there something else going on?
Well, so I mean, the first time that we did it, it was really kind of inspired by my dad, right? So he had had lung cancer at the time, and my brother had gone down to Cabo and was like, did this little off-road adventure, and he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, thinking about doing the 1,000. Like, would you be in?" I'm like, "Hell yeah! Like, tell me when and where. Like, I'll be there, right?" And that really gave my dad a lot of motivation that last year to he had something to look forward to, right? So we did the 1,000, the three of us, the brothers, my dad. We obviously didn't finish, and then it became kind of a challenge, right? Like, we can't let this beat us. We've got to be able to finish. And then we finished a race, and now it's just it's an adventure, and quite frankly, it's just time to be in Mexico. It's a magical place. We eat a ton of tacos. And nobody's making money off of this, right? It's just we're down there having fun and trying to support each other, and it's a challenge against nature. It's like, what's it going to throw at us this time? Are we going to be able to finish? And people all the time like, "Oh, how was vacation?" It's like, man, it wasn't a vacation, right? It's a lot of work to go down there, and it's just gratifying. Even if you don't finish, it's like we're doing something that people talk about, like, "Hey, I should, I might," and we're actually down there doing it, which is pretty cool.
But this does have a big meaning for you. You sent me a picture of your dad
Mhm.
when he did this race. I don't remember how long ago, but it seems like it was in the 70s.
Yeah, so he only finished one race, which, by the way, he held over our heads the entire time. He's like, what's wrong with you guys? Like, I finished the Baja 1000, a stock Volkswagen, and that was back in 75. So that's completely different era technology, the equipment to be able to do it. No GPS, right? Well, I mean, we got GPS to help us out. I have no idea how they navigated that, but yeah, he did it back in 75 and finished the Baja 1000, the one and only time he raced the 1,000. He finished it. So that was one of our challenges. And we actually took his finisher's pin and stuck it to the dashboard whenever we raced the 1,000. So we actually had it in the car with us.
Yeah. Yeah, and the picture of him, like it looks like you in 70s race attire, which is just so cool. And so like what you were explaining to me was when your dad got sick, the three of you guys said like, "Hey, this is something that we can do to help lift his spirits."
Yeah. And like I say, my brother, he was like, we've talked about doing this. We're going to need to do it if we're going to do it, and dad's going to be around. So that was the motivation to go ahead and say, "Hey, we keep talking about it. We actually need to plan it and go do it." But yeah, he was so excited. I mean, he couldn't have been more on cloud nine that his boys were going to go race the Baja 1000. He just thought that was the coolest thing. So initially, we were just going to rent a car and try to do it, like rent a race car. And he's like, "Why don't we buy one?" And he like cruised around Southern California and Arizona trying to find a race car, and he finally found one. He was so excited. He's like, "All right, you guys got to fly out here." So we flew out and took the car for a short little spin and put it back in the trailer. I was like, "All right, let's go race."
Yeah.
But he was the motivation to get it going, and it was great. I'm glad we were able to do it. It's memories that we have.
So dad was really able to be involved in these first couple races with you guys.
Yeah, he was still pretty sick, so he was more spectating than being an active participant. But he had his pickup down there. He was going to chase us. And like I said, we didn't go very far. The first one, we only made about 140 miles before we broke the car. But it was like a year of planning, right, to get up and get ready for this thing. And he was just so excited. He was disappointed, obviously, that we didn't finish, but he couldn't have been more proud of his boys getting down there to go do Baja.
Yeah.
Inexpensive.
So I'm curious, like, what do you think it meant to him, and what did it mean to you to be able to do that for your dad?
Listen, for him, like I say, he couldn't have been more proud of his boys. To see us try to accomplish something that he had done previously, and I'm a dad now, and to have my boys want to do something that I like doing, that's just great, right? And then to be able to participate with him. So as a father, it had to mean everything to him. Like I say, give him something to look forward to. For us as boys, I don't know that we fully grasped what it was that we were doing for him. For us, it was like, "Hey, we're going to go do this crazy adventure. You want to come along?" And now in hindsight, it's like it really meant a lot to the three of us to be able to do that with our dad.
And continues to be.
Yeah, the movie you've referenced, right? It's a multi-generational thing. So we're second generation Baja racers, right? And I've got three boys, and maybe we'll be a three generation Baja racers. So we'll see what they end up doing.
Yeah, I love that. And so you were also explaining to me that you guys didn't actually finish a race before your dad passed. So what did that mean to you guys to actually finish that race, that first race that you finished, as it relates to your dad?
So I got to tell you, so it was a very emotional for me. Part with my dad, right? So finishing a race in the last race we raced before he passed away. He got hospitalized the night before the race, and we went and we raced. We didn't make it very far. I think we made it like 20 miles. And we
Hmm.
saw him in the hospital. And he's like, "Did you guys finish?" And it was like, "No." And he just he kind of put his head back and he's like, he goes, "You will." He goes, "You'll finish." So whenever we finally finished a race, again, it wasn't a super long race. It was 250 miles, but I navigated for my brother into the finish line, right? And here's a guy that it keeps wanting to do this. So I keep supporting him, trying to motivate him, but he just kept facing adversity. And whenever we got to the spot where I was like, we're actually going to finish this race, like I started getting emotional in the car, thinking to myself, like, couldn't be more proud as a little brother of my big brother who keeps facing this and keeps doing
Yeah.
it, and to be able to support him. But it was really for me the first time that we finished. It was a lot of relief for him wanting to do this and getting us down this path, and then for our dad. Whenever we finished the 2017,000, that was the 50th anniversary. So it was 10 years after we had started, and we raced it in my brother's name. So he was the driver of record, and we're sitting down there in La Paz, and I'm like, okay, dad's got to be like completely proud, right? His boys finished the Baja
Yeah.
1000 in a class one unlimited buggy. And for us, class one was so unattainable. Whenever we started, it was like, can you believe those guys that run class one? And here we are, finishing the Baja 1000, 50th anniversary in just under 34 hours. And it was cool. And I know my dad was looking down on it.
Yeah. Did you feel him with you guys when you were finishing that race?
Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. So Colt, this is like a 15-year journey for you. Like, what's the future of Baja for you? I think there's a race coming up next month, is there not?
So there was one that just happened, the Baja 400 in September. Then the 1000 comes up. It's usually the weekend before Thanksgiving. And right now, not my plans. I did go last year, so was able to go last year and help chase the team that ended up finishing first in the class 11 or class one buggies. So for me, my brother, he goes like every race he's down there. So it's pretty much me getting plugged in with my schedule, and then family obligations to be able to go. But it's about time to go down and do Baja again,
I
if
love
nothing
it.
else but to chase and get some tacos.
How get some tacos? Yeah. How has this 15-year experience like changed you? How are you different today than you were 15 years ago because of Baja?
Man, I tell you, I keep going back to Baja's challenging, right? Life's challenging, and you might not have the best circumstances in front of you, but you just got to keep going. Stay positive, right? Whenever adversity hits you, it's easy to throw your hands up and quit. And Baja, the lesson from that is like adversity is going to happen. What are you going to do? Right? Are you going to give up or are you going to figure something out? And we've had to MacGyver things to be able to get the cars to finish. So that piece, that's motivated me and is kind of like part of my core now.
Yeah.
Baja, the peninsula, just the nature piece of it, that has really changed me in wanting to see and experience just nature in its natural beauty, right? And even though we're down there racing, I can't tell you how many times like I'm looking out the window and we've got the Sea of Cortez, or we're on top of a mountain that you've just got these huge, vistas that you can see for miles. And even though we're racing, you got to stop and take that stuff in. So I don't know, Baja, it's once it gets in you, it's hard to get it out.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things I like to talk about in this podcast is the word awe. And the definition that I've read from Google is that awe is a reverential respect mixed with fear or wonder. And I've got to believe that when you're riding in a Baja car at speed, you're feeling the fear, but it sounds like you also experience some moments of awe.
Yeah, I mean, it is so beautiful down there. It is just nature, right? And if you think about that peninsula, a lot of that's untouched. It's rural. It's desolate. It's unforgiving. If you were to ask me, like, how would you describe Baja in a word? The race, it is unforgiving, but it is just absolutely beautiful down there.
Unforgiving is a great word, because when you're talking about awe and nature, it's like, you just feel so small. But I love that. I love that word and that environment that you're in. So there's got to be this element. I mean, you're in this man-made car going at speed through this unforgiving nature. Like, is there some element of like trying to beat nature?
That's it. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. Whenever we go down there, we're just trying to finish that race, and it's you versus Baja, right? And most of the times for us, anyways, is Baja wins. But it's a lot of respect for the terrain. There's a lot of respect for the inherent danger of what we're doing. And again, it's magical whenever we go down there.
All right, Colt. So for people that are listening to this, that are inspired by this story and this passion that you've taken up, what advice do you have for people? Because I'm curious, like, even going back to 15 years ago, like when this idea first came up, like, how did you get over that hump to start and embark on this journey? And what advice do you have for people that are kind of in that same place?
All right. So my number one piece of advice, and this has been spattered in your previous podcast, whenever the opportunity presents itself, take it. Right. And don't push it down the road and say, well, maybe later. Take the opportunity as it presents itself and do it. And if you had something in the back of your mind that you thought to yourself, like, someday I want to, plan it, put it on paper, and figure out how to do it. Right. There's a ton of excuses that you can create. And then there's the reality of, if you want it, go do it. And that's really what we started doing. Right. We talked about this all the way through being kids and adults. And finally it was like, all right, if we're going to do it, let's go do it. Let's get serious about it. And that's my biggest piece of advice: is take the opportunities that are in front of you. Don't wait. Look, maybe later it'll be a better time. Just go.
Yeah. And you guys had some motivation to get it going too. I mean, in your situation. So not everybody like has that time. So yeah, I mean, I love the advice. Just get after it is what I'm hearing you say.
That's it. Go.
Yeah. So Colt, they already made a movie about Baja. It's called Dust to Glory, but like, your story is just incredible, and Hollywood's going to pick up on your story as well. And I want to know, when they do, who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you in this movie about your story at Baja?
Yeah, so I got some help from my wife on this one, but there's an actor named Hunter Emery, and I think she picked him because he looks like me. You may not know him, but he was on Orange is the New Black. So that's where he's known from. But I think it'd be perfect, right? So I'm not looking for a high profile character. I'd rather have somebody that maybe you don't know, so you can kind of fall into the story. So Hunter Emery would be the actor.
Hunter Emery, so he can really dive in and play you. He does look like you.
Yeah,
it's a good pick. She knows her stuff. So I'm curious. Hunter Emery is going to star in this movie. What's it going to be called?
All right, so we kind of talked about this over and over, but the tacos down in Baja are absolutely amazing. My boys have this book I'm trying to think of a title, called Dragons Love Tacos. And I was reading it to them the other night, and I was like, Racers Love Tacos. So the name of the movie is Racers Love Tacos.
Racers Love Tacos. I mean, who doesn't love tacos? That's incredible. I love it. And, that was definitely a theme of the other movie, Dust to Glory. They talked about tacos through the whole thing. So clearly that's a thing there in Baja.
They're amazing.
Yeah, man, this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you spending the time and sharing this story. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. Hope that Colt's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell, or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Colt, thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Thanks for the invite.